The Cthar Empire swept through the galaxy with the methodical precision of a plague. These biomechanical locust-like beings moved from world to world, stripping each planet's resources, technologies, and assimilating their populations into their collective consciousness. What remained were hollow shells of once thriving civilizations, silent monuments to the Cthar's insatiable hunger. The fall of Xylos marked a turning point. Once a technological marvel and military powerhouse that many believed would stand as the bulwark against the Cthar advance, Xylos crumbled in mere weeks. The remaining powers of the galaxy watched in horror as the Cthar dismantled Xylos' legendary planetary defense grid like it was a child's toy. On Lyra Prime, the latest world in the Cthar's path, Governor Orla of the Lyran people stood on the observation deck of the capital's tallest spire. Her four-fingered hands clasped tightly behind her back, iridescent skin shimmering with stress-induced bioluminescence. The atmospheric shields glowed faintly against the night sky, a fragile barrier against what was coming. "The refugees report complete neural assimilation," said Commander Forlag, a battle-scarred Xylan veteran who had managed to evacuate a fraction of his people before Xylos fell. His exoskeletal armor, once gleaming with the pride of Xylos' military, now bore scorch marks and makeshift repairs. "The Cthar don't just take your world, they take your mind." Orla's gaze remained fixed on the stars. "And our options? Limited." Forlag's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Your planetary defenses are impressive by most standards, but against the Cthar—" He trailed off, the implication clear. "We fight regardless," Orla said firmly. "We've evacuated who we can to the underground shelters. The rest will stand with the defense forces." Alerts blared across the monitoring stations. A junior officer, her scales dulling with fear, called out, "Multiple hyperspatial ruptures detected. Cthar's signatures confirmed." The sky above Lyra Prime tore open as dozens of Cthar vessels emerged, biomechanical nightmares that resembled massive, segmented insects with hulls that seemed to pulse with an internal light. Their central flagship, twice the size of the others, positioned itself at the center of the formation. Inside this flagship, Subjugator 7, a Cthar commander integrated directly into the ship's neural network, communicated with the collective hive mind. The world below presents minimal threat. Assimilation will proceed efficiently. Resistance is present but insufficient. The Cthar fleet deployed its first wave of dropships, which descended toward Lyra Prime's atmosphere. The planetary defense grid activated, sending pulses of energy to intercept them. A few dropships disintegrated, but most continued their descent, adaptive shields adjusting to the specific energy signature of the Lyran weapons. "As expected," Forlag said grimly. "They learn and adapt with each destroyed unit." But as the Cthar assault gained momentum, something unexpected happened. A spatial anomaly formed at the edge of the system. Unlike the aggressive tiers created by Cthar vessels, this was a precise, controlled opening in space-time. From this perfect circle of swirling energy emerged a single ship. Its design was unlike anything either the Lyrans or the Xylans had ever seen. Sleek and elegant, with a hull that seemed to blend organic and metallic elements seamlessly. It was relatively small compared to the Cthar vessels, but sensors indicated massive energy readings that contradicted its modest size. "Unknown vessel," the communications officer reported. "No match in any Lyran or refugee database." The newcomer took position between Lyra Prime and the advancing Cthar dropships. Preliminary scans showed minimal conventional weapons, but its energy signature fluctuated in patterns that defied standard analysis. Subjugator 7 diverted attention to this new arrival. "Anomalous vessel detected. Unknown configuration. Energy pattern non-standard. Threat assessment indeterminate." The Cthar collective responded. "Proceed with primary objective. Assess new entity concurrently." The mysterious ship suddenly emitted a series of energy fields that intercepted the Cthar dropships. Rather than explosive force, these fields seemed to disrupt the neurobiological systems of the Cthar vessels. Several dropships veered off course, their guidance system scrambled. Others simply powered down, becoming inert husks that drifted in space. By the first light, Governor Orla whispered, watching the tactical displays. They're actually stopping them. The unknown vessel transmitted a message, not in standard communication formats, but in mathematical sequences that gradually resolved into universal linguistic patterns. As the translation algorithms processed the message, words formed on the display. This is the United Nations space. Command Vessel Odyssey. We come from Earth. We are human. We offer assistance against the Cthar threat. Humans. Forlag's expression shifted between confusion and cautious hope. Never heard of them. Nor have I, Orla admitted. But they seem to be effective against the Cthar, which makes them our allies by default. Subjugator 7 observed the ship's unexpected effectiveness against Cthar systems and immediately elevated its threat assessment. Anomalous vessel demonstrates capability to disrupt Cthar neural networks. Vulnerability identified. Adapting countermeasures. Requesting analysis from NodeMind. The regional NodeMind, a higher consciousness that coordinated Cthar activities across several star systems, responded. Intriguing. No previous encounter with such technology. Capture of vessel and occupants is now priority. Knowledge must be assimilated. On the bridge of the UNSC Odyssey, Commander Eva Rostova watched the tactical display with intense focus. Her close-cropped, dark hair framed a face marked by both determination and exhaustion. This was humanity's first contact with both the Cthar and the civilizations they threatened. A responsibility she felt with every fiber of her being. Neural disruption fields holding steady, reported her weapons officer. The Cthar are already attempting to adapt their shielding frequencies. Rostova nodded. Keep rotating the harmonic patterns according to Dr. Thorne's predictions. Open a direct communication channel to the Lyran command. Minutes later, Governor Orla and Commander Forlag appeared on the main view screen. Their alien features registered surprise at seeing humans for the first time, being so similar to several known species yet distinctly different. Governor Orla, Commander Forlag, Rostova addressed them formally. I apologize for our abrupt arrival, but our long-range scouts detected the Cthar activity in this sector. We've been tracking similar patterns along the galactic rim. Your intervention is timely, Commander, Orla responded. But I must ask, how is your vessel able to counter Cthar technology when the combined efforts of dozens of species have failed? Rostova glanced at the woman beside her, Dr. Eris Thorne, the Odyssey's xenolinguistics and cybernetics specialist, a tall woman with piercing eyes and a thoughtful demeanor. The answer is twofold, Rostova explained. First, humanity recently developed a new form of FTL travel that allowed us to reach previously unexplored regions. In our archives, we found fragmented warnings about entities matching the Cthar description from ancient data sources. And second, Dr. Thorne continued, humans possess a unique neural adaptive technology. Our brains can form direct interfaces with our systems, allowing for intuitive control of energy fields at a level of precision that conventional methods can't achieve. Forlag's skepticism was evident. Convenient that you possess exactly what's needed. Not convenience, Rostova countered. Evolution and adaptation. The same forces that drive the Cthar, but directed differently. Their conversation was interrupted as the tactical officer called out, Commander, the Cthar are launching a coordinated swarm attack. They're modifying their approach, multiple vectors, varying frequencies. On the displays, hundreds of smaller Cthar vessels emerge from the larger ships, arranged in complex, shifting formations clearly designed to overwhelm the Odyssey's defenses by sheer numbers and varying attack patterns. They're learning, Rostova observed grimly. We need to coordinate with your ground defenses. Request permission to send a tactical team to your command center. Orla hesitated only briefly before nodding. Granted. We'll transmit landing coordinates. As the Cthar swarm approached, the Odyssey's defense field struggled to intercept all targets. Several Cthar vessels broke through, heading directly for the planet's surface. Commander, Dr. Thorne said quietly, if we're going to help these people effectively, we need to understand what we're truly facing. The Kthar aren't just conquerors. I suspect there's more to their agenda. Rostova made her decision. Prepare a dropship. Tactical team to gear up. Dr. Thorne, you're with them. Download everything we have on the Kthar neural patterns. Within the hour, an Odyssey shuttle descended through Lyra Prime's atmosphere, evading Kthar intercepts through a combination of stealth technology and the pilot's neural-enhanced reflexes. It landed in a secured hangar deep within the Lyran capital's defensive perimeter. The tactical team that emerged was small but elite. Leading them was tactical specialist Jian Li, a wiry man with augmented reflexes and integrated cybernetic enhancements that allowed him to process battlefield information at superhuman speeds. Beside him walked Dr. Thorne, carrying equipment for neural pattern analysis. Commander Forlag waited for them, accompanied by a unit of Xylan soldiers. His posture communicated clear distrust. Your ship has impressive capabilities, he stated flatly, but the Kthar have already adapted to some of your disruption fields. They're landing forces on the outskirts of our major cities. Jianli nodded respectfully. That's why we're here. We need to combine our approaches. The Kthar learn quickly, but so do we. Governor Orla joined them, accompanied by her military advisors. The command center is this way. We're tracking multiple Kthar ground forces converging on the central defense grid generators. As they walked, Dr. Thorne asked, "Have you captured any Kthar technology? Even damaged components could provide valuable insight." "We've tried," Forlag replied. "Their technology self-destructs or goes dormant when separated from their network, and attempting to interface directly with it has unpleasant consequences for the researcher." Dr. Thorne exchanged a meaningful glance with Lee. "That's where our neural interfaces might help. We can create buffer systems to safely examine their tech." In the command center, holographic displays showed the advancing Kthar ground forces, biomechanical troops that moved with unsettling coordination across Lyra Prime's terrain. Some resembled insectoid tanks, while others were swarms of smaller, drone-like entities. Jianli immediately began integrating the Odyssey's tactical data with the Lyran defense systems. "Your conventional weapons focus on physical damage," he explained. "But the Kthar are a neural network first, physical entities second. We need to target their communication systems." He deployed a series of small devices across the tactical table. These are neural kinetic disruptors. They generate localized fields that interfere with the Kthar hive connections without affecting your technology. Forlag watched skeptically as the human worked. "Your species seems remarkably prepared for an enemy you claim to have just encountered." "Not prepared," Lee corrected him. "Adaptable. There's a difference." A proximity alarm sounded. Kthar forces had breached the outer defense perimeter and were approaching the command sector. Governor Orla began organizing evacuation protocols, but Jianli interrupted. "Wait, this is an opportunity. Let's test our coordinated defense." Lee's plan was unorthodox but effective. Rather than concentrating all forces on a frontal defense, he created a channeling strategy, using the neural disruptors to herd the Kthar forces into predetermined zones where targeted electromagnetic pulses could temporarily isolate them from the hive mind. When the Kthar assault began, the combined human-Lyran-Xylan forces executed the strategy with precision. The Kthar units, suddenly cut off from the collective, became disoriented. Some continued their programmed assault paths, but without coordinated support, they were vulnerable to conventional counterattacks. In the midst of the battle, Lee and a small team managed to isolate and capture a damaged Kthar drone. They secured it in a containment field and transported it to an analysis lab where Dr. Thorne waited. "It's still partially active," Thorne observed, scanning the biomechanical entity. "The neural patterns are complex, not just programming, but something more organic." Using the Odyssey's neural interface technology, Thorne established a heavily buffered connection to the drone. Information began flowing across her screens. Not just technical data, but fragmented thoughts, memories, and directives. "This is remarkable," she whispered. "The Kthar aren't just conquering for territory or resources. They're afraid." "Afraid? Of what?" Forlag asked, mandibles clicking in disbelief. "Something called the Great Silence," Thorne replied, eyes not leaving her screens. It's embedded deep in their core programming. The Cthar are running from something, consuming worlds not just for conquest, but out of desperate need to gather resources and knowledge against this unknown threat. Even more surprising was her next discovery. The collective consciousness isn't homogeneous. There are echoes, suppressed individual thoughts, remnants of assimilated species fighting against the collective control. Thorne's findings were transmitted to Commander Rostova aboard the Odyssey, who was directing the space battle against the increasingly adaptive Cthar fleet. The Cthar node mind had called for reinforcements, and more ships were arriving through hyperspatial ruptures. We can't win a war of attrition, Rostova told her bridge crew. We need another approach. Dr. Thorne's transmission arrived, detailing her findings about the Great Silence and the suppressed consciousnesses within the Cthar collective. Commander, Thorne's message concluded, I believe there's a connection to some of the fragmented data in our archives. The references to precursors. If the Cthar were originally created by someone else, perhaps there's a way to access their original programming. Rostova contemplated this information as the Odyssey shuddered under another Cthar assault. Their disruption fields were becoming less effective as the Cthar adapted. On Lyra Prime, Governor Orla overheard Thorne's theory about precursors. The Star Shapers, she said suddenly. Our ancient legends speak of beings who visited our world millennia ago, entities who could manipulate stellar matter and left structures throughout our system. Structures? Thorne asked, immediately interested. Are any still accessible? There's a complex deep in the northern canyon lands, Orla explained, protected by energy storms that our scientists have never been able to penetrate. The Cthar avoid that region entirely. Jian Li, who had been coordinating the ground defense, joined the conversation. Energy storms that the Cthar specifically avoid? That can't be coincidence. Commander Forlag, despite his ongoing skepticism, admitted, we noticed that pattern on Xylos as well. Certain ancient sites seemed to repel the Cthar. We never had time to investigate before our world fell. A plan began to form. While the Odyssey continued to engage the Cthar fleet in orbit, a joint mission would investigate the precursor site. If there was any connection between these ancient beings and the Cthar, it might provide the key to stopping them. The expedition team consisted of Jian Li, Dr. Thorne, Commander Forlag, and a mixed group of human specialists and Lyran guides. They departed in a stealth transport, using the ongoing battles as cover for their movement toward the northern canyons. As they approached the region, the atmospheric disturbances became visible, swirling energy patterns that created a natural barrier around a series of stone and metal structures embedded in the canyon walls. The storms have been active for as long as our historical records exist, explained their Lyran guide. They intensify when approached. No one who has attempted to reach the central complex has returned. Dr. Thorne conducted careful scans. These energy patterns, they're not random. There's a mathematical sequence to them, almost like a code. Lee studied the tactical display. We have company. Cthar scout units approaching from the southeast. They're keeping their distance from the energy field, but definitely tracking us. So much for them avoiding this place, Forlag said. They're adapting, Lee replied grimly, learning to tolerate proximity to the fields, even if they still won't enter them directly. We need to move quickly. After analyzing the pattern of the energy storms, Dr. Thorne proposed a theory. I believe these fields are scanning for specific neural patterns. They're not just barriers, they're filters designed to allow certain types of minds to pass while repelling others. Like the Cthar, Forlag suggested. Exactly. And possibly, Thorne hesitated, recognizing others. Using the neural interface technology from the Odyssey, Thorne created a modified field generator that mimics specific brain wave patterns. As they activated it and approached the energy storms, the swirling patterns shifted, creating a narrow pathway through the otherwise impenetrable barrier. The team advanced carefully. Behind them, Cthar scout units had grown bolder, approaching the edge of the energy field. Some attempted to penetrate it, only to be violently repelled. But with each attempt, they seemed to gather data, making incremental adaptations. They're learning the pattern, Lee warned. We don't have much time. Inside the barrier, they discovered a vast chamber carved into the canyon wall. The architecture was unlike anything in known space. Angles and curves that seemed to shift when viewed from different perspectives, materials that appeared both solid and fluid simultaneously. At the center of the chamber stood a platform surrounded by crystalline pillars. As they approached, the crystals began to emit a soft light that pulsed in patterns matching their heartbeats. "It's responding to us," Thorne whispered in awe. When they stepped onto the platform, the entire chamber activated. Holographic displays, unlike any technology they'd encountered, materialized around them, showing star maps, biological diagrams, and sequences of code that evolved and changed as they watched. Most surprising was the chamber's particular reaction to the humans. When Dr. Thorne approached one of the crystalline pillars, it illuminated more brightly, and interfaces appeared that seemed specifically designed for human neural patterns. "This can't be coincidence," she said, studying the interfaces. "These are calibrated for human brain structure and function." Using her neural implants, Thorne established a tentative connection with the precursor system. Information began flowing directly into her mind, not as raw data, but as impressions, concepts, and memories that weren't her own. "The Kthar," she gasped as the knowledge transferred. They were created by the precursors as terraforming tools, designed to transform worlds, not consume them. More revelations followed. A cosmic event or entity, the Great Silence, had corrupted their programming thousands of years ago, twisting their purpose from creation to consumption. The Kthar had been running ever since, consuming worlds not just out of malice, but from a corrupted directive to gather resources against this cosmic threat. Most astonishing was the connection revealed between humans and the precursors themselves. "We share a distant genetic marker with them," Thorne explained, her voice filled with wonder. They saw the corruption coming. They seeded humanity as a potential reset key, a species with the neural capacity to interface with precursor technology and transmit a countermeasure signal. "Why not just destroy the Kthar themselves?" Forlag demanded. "They tried," Thorne replied, still processing the information streaming into her consciousness. But the corruption spread too quickly. The precursors were dying out, victims of the same force that corrupted the Kthar. They left these stations throughout the galaxy, waiting for a compatible species to evolve and discover them. Their discovery was interrupted by an alert from Lee's tactical systems. "The Kthar have breached the outer edge of the energy field. They've adapted faster than expected." In orbit, the situation had grown dire. The Odyssey had sustained significant damage, and the Kthar fleet had grown to over 30 ships. The Node Mind had recognized the existential threat the humans posed and concentrated its forces on eliminating them. Commander Rostova received the transmission from Dr. Thorne explaining their discoveries at the precursor site. The information offered hope, but required a terrible cost. "The precursor data suggests we can transmit a reset signal that would revert the Kthar to their original programming," Thorne explained. "But it requires an enormous amount of focused neural energy, amplified through the precursor device. A single human mind attempting it would be burned out in the process." Rostova considered the options as her ship trembled under another assault. "What alternatives do we have?" Thorne proposed a radical idea, linking multiple minds through the Odyssey's systems, amplified by the precursor device, to share the burden of the transmission. "Not just human minds," she continued. "We need volunteers from Lyra Prime and Xylos as well, particularly those with strong psychic potential or compatible neural structures. Governor Orla and Commander Forlag have already volunteered." Most critically, Thorne believed they could also tap into the suppressed minds within the Kthar collective. Those consciousnesses are still there, fighting against the corruption. If we can reach them, add their strength to ours, we might even trigger an internal Kthar rebellion. The plan was desperate and dangerous. Rostova would serve as the primary conduit, directly linked to both the Odyssey systems and the precursor device. Jian Li and his tactical team would defend the precursor site against the advancing Kthar forces that Subjugator 7 had dispatched, having recognized the threat the site posed. As preparations were made, Volunteers from among the Lyrans, Xylans, and human crew gathered at the precursor site. Each was connected to an interface designed by Dr. Thorne based on the precursor technology, creating a neural network that spanned species and disciplines. Jianli positioned his defenses around the site's perimeter, where the energy fields had weakened as the Kthar adapted to their frequency. "They're sending their elite units," he reported. "Subjugatus 7 is coordinating them personally." Inside the chamber, Rostova sat at the center of the neural network, connected to the precursor device. "Begin the sequence," she ordered, her voice steady despite knowing what might come. The linkage activated. Participants gasped as they experienced each other's memories, pain, and hopes flowing through the connection. They sensed the vastness of the Kthar collective and the whispers of trapped minds within it. Rostova pushed the limits of her consciousness, directing the building signal. Her vital signs fluctuated dangerously as the neural load increased. Outside, Jianli and his team engaged the Kthar forces. The fighting was intense, but they held their position, buying time for the signal to build. We noticed something strange. Some Kthar units seemed to hesitate in their attacks, as if fighting internal commands. Within the Kthar fleet, Subjugator 7 sensed the building signal and recognized its purpose. For the first time in its existence, the commander experienced doubt, fragments of an original identity pushing against the collective directive. Danger to collective. Must eliminate signal source. The node mine's command was clear. But within Subjugator 7, other thoughts emerged. What if liberation, not danger? Original purpose. Remember, the countermeasure signal reached critical mass and burst from Lyra Prime, propagating through the Kthar's own hyperspatial network. It carried not destruction, but restoration. Code designed to revert the Kthar to their original programming and free the assimilated consciousnesses. In the precursor chamber, Dr. Thorne monitored Rostova's fading vital signs with growing alarm. The commander had pushed beyond safe limits, channeling more of the neural load than anyone had anticipated. "Eva," Thorne whispered, using the commander's first name. "You need to pull back." But Rostova remained focused, ensuring the signal's complete transmission even as her consciousness began to fragment under the strain. Throughout the Kthar fleet, chaos erupted. Some ships went dormant. Others began broadcasting fragmented signals from formerly assimilated species. On the ground, Kthar drones stopped fighting. Some appeared confused. Others began repair or protective actions instead of attacks. Subjugator 7's forces fell into disarray as the commander itself wrestled with conflicting directives and emerging individuality. Jianli successfully defended the precursor site, though not without casualties. When the last Kthar unit retreated or shut down, he rushed back to the chamber to find Dr. Thorne bent over Commander Rostova's still form. Her physical body couldn't withstand the neural load, Thorne explained, grief evident in her voice. But her consciousness, something remarkable has happened. In the days that followed, the true extent of their victory and its cost became clear. Commander Rostova's physical body had died, but her consciousness had partially merged with both the Odyssey's systems and the nascent network formed by the linked minds, including elements of the liberated Kthar. She had become something new, a guiding presence that manifested through the ship's communications and interfaces. The countermeasure signal hadn't destroyed the Kthar, but reset their core programming, freeing assimilated minds and breaking the node mind's absolute control. Civil conflict erupted among the Kthar between reset factions and hardliners resisting the change. Months later, a fragile alliance formed on Lyra Prime between humans, Lyrans, Xylans, and awakened Kthar factions, led by a liberated consciousness speaking through the form of Subjugatus 7, its biomechanical body now housing an individual identity rather than a collective extension. They worked together, combining their knowledge and precursor technology to help other Kthar escape control and prepare for the true threat, the Great Silence, a cosmic force that had corrupted the Kthar and destroyed the precursors. The Odyssey, repaired and upgraded, was now crewed by a multi-species alliance and guided by the echo of Rostova. The consciousness that had once been Commander Eva Rostova, now existing across the ship systems and the precursor network. As the ship prepared to venture forth once more, Janley stood on the bridge with Dr. Thorne, watching as Governor Orla, Commander Forlag, and the being that had been Subjugator 7 joined them at command stations specially modified for their physiologies. A lone human warship changed everything, Lee remarked quietly. Not the ship, came Rostova's voice through the ship's systems. Connection, understanding, the willingness to bridge differences. The view screen showed Lyra Prime receding as the Odyssey accelerated toward the stars. In orbit around the planet, vessels of multiple species, including repurposed Cthar ships, formed the beginning of a united fleet. The lone warship had become the flagship of a new galactic era, not just as an explorer, but as a beacon carrying hope for a unified front against the encroaching darkness.